from Manchester, New Hampshire. And we are sitting here thinking about something that hasn't been mentioned all day, maybe even all week. And it's almost as if it's an afterthought. And when this becomes an afterthought, we have to question very, very seriously the loyalty of our leadership in the United States. Oh, we've heard a lot of talk about ceasefires, haven't we? We've heard a lot of talk about hostages. Israeli, Palestinian. Today, the Hamas included as a surprise for an ulterior motive that most of the idiot press didn't point out. People from the Philippines, a person from the Philippines, and people from Thailand. Oh, and Biden is basically taking a victory lap for making probably one of the most idiotic, stupid deals in which someone was snookered in American diplomatic history. Well, he didn't make the deal. He forced Bibi Netanyahu to make one of the dumbest deals ever made that in the big picture will cost a lot more lives than it will save if it hasn't already done so. But in any event, even with all that, did anybody mention the American hostages? I don't know. Did you hear them talked about today on the Communist News Network or their affiliates like MSNBC and NBC and ABC and CBS? Anybody mention the Americans? What country are we in? China? It looked that way last week in San Francisco. Biden is painfully trying to end this war and get ceasefires and delays and doesn't seem to have any interest in wiping out Hamas. He says that Israel should do it, but they should do it, they should do it in 3 days with 14 interruptions. I mean, they're on the verge of wiping them out, and now they're going to take 5 days off. For what purpose? Humanitarian relief? Like hell. For the purpose of fleeing, running away, reestablishing whatever they have, booby-trapping the rest, because they were getting their heads kicked in. And they went like this. And you do that in basketball and football. You don't do that in war. I don't know. You do this to Patton, he blows your brains out, right? Can you imagine a German going like this to Patton as his tank was coming through? Shoo! MacArthur, even Eisenhower. I can just see it now. Second day of the invasion in Normandy. We'll take 5 days off so the Germans can have some humanitarian relief. They didn't have, since they were surprised, the Nazis didn't get a chance to have a good meal or two before the invasion. And gosh, by mistake, we hit one or two of their hospitals where their soldiers that wanted to kill us were laid up. So we're going to take 5 days off so the Germans can, I don't know, deal with the trauma of it, or maybe bring some more troops over from Germany, get more arms so they can kill more of us. So I want you I want you to, if you can, follow me on this, because I think this might be at the core of what is so corrupt about our government. Corrupt in not the sense of money, but corrupt in it doesn't achieve the purpose for which it was intended. And we are all so disgusted with it because it is so far away from what our founding fathers had in mind for us. And it is so far away from that great shining city on the hill that has filled the dreams of people from all over the world since just about the day of our winning the revolution or announcing the Constitution. A leader of a country or an army or a group of people takes an oath to do everything they can to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the people of the United States. In this case, we're talking about the people. So this deal that we are talking about should be evaluated against that standard. Does this do the best job of serving, protecting, and defending? In the case of Israel, the people of Israel. In the case of the United States, the people of the United States. Or does it imperil their preservation, even though it saves a certain number of people? Now, this is extraordinarily difficult to do because there is an enormous amount of legitimate emotion involved in this. If any one of these people was your daughter, your son, your father, your mother, you'd want that person returned, and more likely than not consider too heavily the consequences on the other side. What will it cost? Or you might not logically want to accept them. Even if someone were to say to you, well, by making this deal, we're going to save 13 lives, but we're going to lose 50. Even if someone were able to say that to you, you would dispute it and say, well, that's not true, or you can't prove that, or you would not be faulted for that, because the mind rejects even logical, correct, rational analysis that is so contrary to deep human emotion. Human emotion almost always wins out over logic, even if both are honest and correct. So there's no one criticizing the people who are up close and involved with these people. But the leader of a country has to be beyond that. The leader of the country has to have the ability to have the courage and the strength to make exceedingly difficult decisions where lives are lost in order to save other lives. And if that leader is constantly making emotional decisions, saving small numbers of lives and costing large numbers of casualties, not going to have a country or an army for very long. And he certainly is, he or she is not going to be a leader, but a pathetic follower who was never intended for that kind of role. That's what we have here. This decision, in which Bibi Netanyahu was mercilessly pushed by Biden, the fool, will cost way, way more lives than it's going to save. Just a mere cessation of the unbelievably successful Israeli march into Gaza will cost Israeli lives. This is, similar to the way the Germans pushed into Poland and other countries. They did the Blitzkrieg, right? They did it so fast, it was very, very hard to organize and to create big casualties among them. It's part of what helped us succeed in the invasion of Normandy. Part of what allowed Patton to succeed when he had to back us up when we were getting defeated originally in the Battle of the Bulge. It's part of what allowed Eisenhower to succeed in the Battle of Incheon. These are all situations in which you've overwhelmed the enemy and you keep going until you've exhausted the advantage. In the middle of doing that, the Israelis were told to stop, as if, we were told to stop 10 miles off the beaches of Normandy. And let's take 5 days off so some hostages can be exchanged. But, in the course of those 5 days, everybody's going to get to rearrange what they have on the field. And they are going to try very hard to minimize their losses and maximize your losses. And since it was all going in our direction, there's nothing that can be done here that's going to help us. We might be able to reverse their being able to hurt us significantly, but make no mistake that we are going to lose Israeli lives as a result of this, who would not have been able to regroup and get ready as the IDF was crushing them. That's the real reason for this. And if we continue to do it as this war goes along, it's hard to call any war a joke, but this war will go down in history as probably the most moronic war ever conducted by a serious military. 3 days on, 5 days off, 8 days on, 4 days off. Then if the Palestinians want longer amounts of time, they just add 10 hostages. I don't know who wrote this agreement. Obviously, somebody who's got their brain up their backside. But if they add 10 more, then instead of 4 days of rest and reorganization, you get 5. Or if you add 20 more, you'd get 6 days. Gosh, you could almost reorganize an entire army in that period of time. So every time Israel gets an advantage and Hamas is hurting, should this go on, they just go, hostages, hostages, we got hostages, stop, stop. And what do? They send over a bunch of children and old women, which is wonderful. God bless that we're able to save them. The point that I'm making is these people are not exactly going to imperil the safety of Hamas. These are not people who can do damage to Hamas or to the Palestinians. Now, in the first group released by the Israelis, even though they had to release far more than were released by Hamas, they did release women and children. They did not release soldiers. So the numbers roughly work out this way. It's a little confusing. Originally, it was going to be 50 released by Hamas and 150 released by Israel over a period of several exchanges. So now this particular ceasefire was originally going to involve, I can't remember if it was 13 or 15 Israelis. And it would involve then 150 Palestinians, which does seem like Israel got their pants taken off in the deal, right? And America too. America got completely squashed in the deal because no Americans were going to be released, nor do we care enough about Americans to ask or demand it. Biden's lack of concern for the lives of us is unique among American presidents. American presidents make a great deal of we don't leave our people behind and we're loyal to each other. This is not the first time that Biden has evinced no interest in saving the lives of Americans. And for that, he should be not impeached, not even put in prison. But Almighty God, who I have no great extra power with, and he may reject me and think I'm committing a sin by saying this, but I do believe Almighty God is going to condemn him to hell for this. You can't turn your back on your citizens like this just because you're a sick narcissist. What's wrong with this man? Is he really evil? We're not sure we really know the number, right? They released 4 women, and they were said to have 14 or 15, or now they're said to have 10 to 13. But we don't have any names. We don't have any identities. We have no proof they're alive. And I've seen no change in the statement made by Jake Sullivan about 10 days ago that we're not even certain they're alive. We have no proof they're alive. Now, when you negotiate for hostages, you negotiate always. I mean, I think this is hostage negotiation school 101. Before you begin any serious negotiation, get proof that the hostages are still alive. Let's hear a voice. Let's see a picture. Let me allow someone to go over. You can hold them, but they can report back to us that people are still alive and that they're not being tortured. But with them, they would lie to you about both. And it seemed to me there was enough doubt about this that Sullivan did say it. I don't think it's something you would say if you're not worried that you don't want to look like a fool negotiating for no one. But the part of it that is troubling to me, to the point of, I don't know how to even describe it, anger. How could I get angrier at Biden than I am? Complete disgust. Nobody mentions the Americans. There are Americans there. Now, I want to remind you of something. I was the first one to point this out, but no one, I think, remembers this because the major media tries to make believe I don't exist. But thank God that I do, because if I didn't exist, I'm not sure you would have known about Biden because nobody was bringing it out. And I don't know how many people would have stayed with it. But in any event, I'm very proud of that. Don't regret it at all. Would do it tomorrow again, except louder. But the reality is that we have more than 10 or 13 Americans there. Stinking Blinken, about 4 weeks ago, on, I believe, Stephanopoulos' show, said there were about 500 Americans that were not let out of Gaza. As far as I know, very few of them have been let out of Gaza. Anybody care about them? Anybody in the Biden regime who presumably is a fellow American, any of them have any interest in them? Is there any point in saying you damn well better return those people to us? You're not going to exist anymore. Who's there to protect us? Who's there to represent us? Do you realize that in these situations, here, situations of life and death, the United States is unrepresented? It was unrepresented in the meetings with China. A glorious ceremony for a communist leader with communist flags and communists cheering in the streets of San Francisco. A couple of little American flags mixed in. And, we had to be thankful nobody burned them. Maybe they did. We have given this country away. The regime here, by opening our borders, by not defending our people, with a strength and a power that pervades the world. People around the world should be frightened to put their hands on citizens of the most powerful nation on earth. You should have the protection that if God forbid someone takes you, that all the power of this country will be behind you and you will not be forgotten. Now, you may not even be known about. And then if you are, they're too busy thinking about Hamas. And gosh, don't kill too many terrorists. And don't make too many mistakes in doing it, even though they put civilians in front of themselves. That's all Biden cares about. All Biden cares about is Israel. Be careful in the way you carry this out. You got to carry it out with war. Meanwhile, the people that were killed on the Israeli side were mostly women and children. They didn't come after the Israeli army. They came after Israeli civilians. They came after the members of the kibbutzim. They came after the peaceniks. This is a net loss of major proportions that we are imposing on our friend, the state of Israel. And they are accepting it because they have no choice. Believe me, if they could, they would tell us to go to hell, which is where our people belong. There is no way Bibi Netanyahu and the generals of the IDF wanted to stop the pursuit of Hamas for 5 days so Hamas can regroup. There is no way they don't realize they're going to lose more Israeli soldiers by the fact that they get a chance to regroup. And where is our concern about our citizens? He doesn't mention them. Blinken doesn't mention them. No Democrat in Congress mentions them. It's as if they're a burden. Maybe Sullivan was wishing they were dead. I don't know. He's a pretty horrible human being. And then where's the concern about the other couple of thousand? They don't even get a report on how many there are, or have we gotten them back, or what are we doing to get them back? Don't we have special forces that specialize in extrication of Americans? Isn't that what we train them to do? Aren't we very, very good at that? I'm not asking these questions. I know the answer to these questions. We're the best in the world in saving our people. We're better than Israel. We learned it from Israel and we perfected it. You can't imagine what our rate is. You cannot imagine what our rate is in saving people when we have a chance to organize it. And we've had an eternity to organize it now, and we haven't done a damn thing because he doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about America. As far as he's concerned, these are a bunch of racists, because that's what we are, or deplorables. Look at the pictures. Do you have the pictures out now, Ted? Are you showing them?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you look at the pictures of those poor people. Those are old, elderly people. Taking them alone has to tell you what you're dealing with. This is who you take hostage. Not military. You take civilians. You take elderly women hostage. And then when Israel is pounding you into extinction, you use them to save yourself. And how does Biden look at this and say, what are we doing for the Americans? And if he doesn't say it, who's going to say it? And if he doesn't say it, what's wrong with him for not saying it? What's wrong with him is what I've told you about him and Obama for a long time. They do not love the United States. They may very well hate the United States. Or if they don't, they sure as hell make it seem like they do. Where are the Americans? Who cares about them? We do. Where are they? Are they alive? Are we getting them back? And why the hell don't we tell Qatar to get them for us? All Qatar has to do is tell the leaders of Hamas, who are billionaires as a result of Qatar and want to remain billionaires, geez, get those Americans back right now, or we're going to have to throw you out, or we're going to have to turn you over to America, and they'll have Republicans prosecute you. Because if they said we'll have Democrats prosecute you, they'll probably get the Congressional Medal of Honor. Because I can't think of one that speaks up for the United States anymore. Maybe a little whisper here or there. You know, one of the squad communists says Israel should be destroyed. And they say, that isn't the right thing to say. You shouldn't say that. And then there's a vote. There's a vote. And what do? Even the Jewish members? Did they, Ted, when the avowed, determined anti-American, American-hating Tlaib was condemned by Congress, did any Democrat vote for her being condemned because she wants to extinguish the state of Israel? Because I want to commend the Democrats who did it, and I want to condemn the ones who didn't. I do believe some did. I thought there was something like 20 or 24 Democrats who voted for it. Vast majority of Democrats voted against it. And the overwhelming majority of Republicans voted to condemn her. But there were a couple, I think, of Republicans. I may be wrong on this. Republicans may have been united in throw the bum out. The interesting poll is that only 52% of Democrats approve Israel, and 77% of Republicans do. So I don't know. I think there should be a change of party pretty soon. I don't know why you want to be a member of a party that doesn't approve of or care about or love your homeland. We sure do. Well, another day goes by and nothing said about the American hostages. Because let's face it, we don't have a president. This country is not represented. Our president represents other countries. Some of them we have figured out because he's gotten obscene amounts of money from those countries. Others, it's a matter of ideology. This thing with Iran and Islamic extremists is a sickness that we brought into our government when we elected Barack Obama, because he has a sick relationship and feeling toward the Islamic Republic of Iran. Nobody gives a country like that hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. A country that slaughters more innocent people than anyone and sponsors terrorism all across the world. No one gives them money unless there's some kind of sick relationship with them. Certainly, well, any kind of money, but in particular, when it's put into your right up into your face as cash and you know it's going to terrorists. What kind of person are you, Prince Obama? Not much. Well, let's hope they can get back on the field soon. But this will mean that the goal of eliminating Hamas is now much more difficult, because a good deal of Hamas has to have escaped at this point. And of course, the leadership of Hamas exists in Qatar. And for that, they're going to have to depend on the United States really being a friend of Israel and demanding that Qatar turn those mass murderers over and not protect them. And I will guarantee you that the Democratic Party doesn't have enough loyalty to our country to do it. So we will take a short break and we'll be back shortly. Towers Foundation delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnel to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now. Welcome back to America's Mayor Live on this day after Thanksgiving, 2023. And the interesting thing about the removal of the hostages is that it took place in the Rafah border crossing. Now, let's take a look at that for a moment. Let's just take a look at that for one moment. Okay. So let's, Rafah. Here is Rafah. Rafah is the border between Gaza and Egypt. Generally very heavily policed, very carefully guarded, unlike, the borders of the United States, where we invite any organized criminal, terrorist, pervert, sex criminal, human trafficker in, if they want to come in, because we don't bother to check. And once you let anybody in, you don't bother to check, they all come. So this is one of the other policies of the Biden regime intended to destroy the United States as a individual nation. So we become part of the Obama, Klaus Schwab, one world. But according to the reports and the pictures we saw, the hostages were pulled out of Rafah, which, unless there's something I'm misunderstanding about that, is if they came across the border in Rafah, were they being held in Egypt? I think maybe that's a little bit of not a precise enough description. Here's what I think happened. I think they came across a border crossing in Rafah between Gaza and Israel, because there's both the Rafah border crossing and the lowest, most southern point in Gaza is also called Rafah. So I think when they're saying a border crossing in Rafah, I think they're talking about a border crossing between Gaza on the one side and Israel on the other, not the very, very controversial, very big, and very important border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Now, why is that so important? Because when the Israelis defeated Egypt and drove them out across the Sinai, they eventually gave Egypt back the Sinai. The border crossing they set up was at Rafah. And for years now, a couple of generations, the Egyptians have closed that border crossing. And if you are Palestinian, you do not get into Egypt, even today. Now, I want you to consider that when there are people in this country, including one of the Republican candidates for president, the one who must have developed this idea at the United Nations, drinking some of the I've forgotten in Dr. Strangelove what they had in the water, but the general who started the nuclear attack was certain that the Soviets had put something in our water to destroy us. Well, they must put something in the water at the UN to get Nikki Haley to believe that half the Palestinians really don't like Hamas and really are just the most wonderful people who would make great Americans. She has to know that just about every single Palestinian is taught at the earliest age in school to kill Jews, the way we used to be taught to love America, the way we used to be taught to love America, the way we used to be taught to do the national anthem, to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Some of us even sang the national anthem and prayed. Well, they go even beyond that. They talk about killing Jews. They demonstrate how to do it. Read the article in last week's Epic Times about the Palestinian who describes in great detail his early education. He is not a member of Hamas. He's just a good old regular Palestinian. And the reality is that Hamas is the elected government of the Palestinians. And tell me, Haley, how many demonstrations have you seen against Hamas in Gaza? Because if you've seen them, we're going to have to check what you're taking. You must be taking something that creates illusions, because they do not protest. And where do you see the protests now? When they went in and slaughtered people like those women and children they're returning. That's a pretty fair sample of who they went in and killed, those little babies that they're returning. So this exchange took place in the southern part of Gaza, which indicates they've moved a lot of their operations to the southern part. And if anything, this 4 or 5 a day delay is going to allow them to do even more of it, because it's going to be hard to maintain the very strict line that they have basically in the middle of Gaza, making it impossible for people to go north or south without the permission of the IDF. So we'll see where the rest of the hostages come from. But right now it seems like unless they move them there to fool us, they're keeping them in the south, which also makes it safer for them, because these hostages they're largely not going to kill these hostages, or most of them, because this is like money in the bank for them. And when they need more hostages, they're just going to take it. Now, what they might not be able to do is get as sympathetic hostages as they were able to get, because they had the element of surprise on their side. It's one thing to take soldiers. It's another thing to take civilians. and soldiers are more like soldiers of, prisoners of war, whereas hostages are altogether different thing under international law, or just the law of decency and common humanity. So we had in New York, here we are all the way on that side of the world with these terrible things going on, and the Palestinians bringing us back into the 7th and 8th century. But we kind of had it in New York too. We have a parade in New York that I'm very proud of. It's the Thanksgiving Day parade. I was proud of that parade before I was mayor. I went to it myself as a child. I went to it as an adult, and I went to it as a father almost every year that we were in New York at Thanksgiving. Not only the parade, but I'd go with my children and sometimes with our friends' children to watch the blowing up of the balloons the night before. It was a big thing for us. We loved the parade. I did personally, and my family did, and a lot of my friends did. And then when I became mayor, I was in charge of the security for the parade, which is a substantial thing. It gets threats, and it is a dangerous thing. It has been. Remember, every parade that I had took place after the first terrorist attack on New York. So I was on guard against that from the very, very beginning. To see what happened yesterday, and to see it allowed to play out the way it did, without the police cutting it off like that, in the largest Jewish city in the United States, and a city, I'm sorry, that owes the Jewish people better than that for their contributions to making New York, at one time, the preeminent city in the world. Right now, it's too damn corrupt to be considered a preeminent city, and it is not run like an American city. It's run like a democratic dictatorship. I can personally tell you that because I am the victim of some of that. But in any event, to have this happen in New York is a disgrace. Of course, it is a city where this has been coming in for some time. We thought we had stemmed it and quelled it after the pogrom in Brooklyn under the Democrats. But do we have so the parade was going along. It starts at 9 in the morning. It starts all the way up on the west side at the History Museum, Natural History Museum. And it comes down the west side of Manhattan, and then it starts to move over as Broadway moves over. So actually it ends up in front of Macy's, which is basically in the middle of the island, but on the east side. And about 11 o'clock, a group of these out of control, extraordinarily ill-mannered, as well as very poorly educated nitwits, idiots, interrupted the parade, cemented themselves or something to the ground, and tried to prevent the parade from going forward, yelling, free Palestine and all that crazy stuff that they do because they are in love with a homicidal terrorist group that particularly likes to kill women, children, and rape women. Also would kill anyone who is gay or lesbian, just for the hell of it. This is the group they are protesting for. They're protesting again for a homicidal terrorist group that likes to create its terrorist effect by slaughtering children, old women, rape women, and things like that. Now, when you look at them, you do see strange looks on their face, and you wonder if this isn't as well a mental illness. It certainly is a massive character defect. You see one of them sitting on the ground, think that big balloon going over him probably has more sense than he does. But can they hear what he's saying?
No, we can turn up the volume, but they're listening to you right now.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine.
For a minute?
No, he's explaining to us the intricacies of Middle East relations.
Yeah.
This man is a scholar of the Middle East. I'm sure he reads a lot of books.
Well, be careful not to misgender he, him, Zim.
Is that not a him?
I wouldn't. I don't assume such things, Mayor. Right?
Well, how can you tell he's
of
not?
Course, I'm being very, very sarcastic. I want to point out.
What's this? What's this thing coming down? Did he take a shower? This thing. Look how dirty his back is.
Amazing, right? Let's watch that again. There he, she goes.
But based on the hair, I can't tell.
Yeah, that's tough.
I think that's a guy.
He's a very troubled individual, clearly.
Well, he's got a lot to say, though.
Yeah.
You notice nobody pays attention to him, though. That could be his problem. He probably talks all the time and nobody listens to him.
Yeah. So they coat themselves.
So they are protesting in favor of the people who killed 1,400 innocent Jewish people.
Clearly something wrong with this individual. It's like, sir, you're yelling at the people carrying a balloon of Barney.
But there are an awful lot of them.
That's a Lego float, sir.
There are a lot of them. I mean, they get like a couple 100,000 in a crowd. Colonialism. How stupid is that? That's an Obama stupidity. Colonialism. That comes from Obama's father that he met for 3 weeks, who opposed colonialism because he opposed colonialism, but had a problem remembering that he was married when he married Obama's mother. So part of, I think, all the embarrassment and stuff about the birth certificate is the fact that if, in fact, Obama and Mr. Obama and Mrs. Obama were married, Mr. Obama was an out-and-out bigamist. And if they weren't married, then he was illegitimate. So the birth certificate, even though I guess people used it for other purposes, did have sort of a little problem attached to it. But Obama's old man was a revolutionary, half-assed intellectual, and a silly colonialist who got his son to believe that Churchill shouldn't be in the White House. And this is, based on the extraordinary amount of time he spent with his son, which I think was about 3 weeks in his lifetime. I may have exaggerated that. It may have been like a year or two or something like that. But it was a relatively short period of time for Obama to hero worship him the way he did. And if you read Obama's book, you can see that Obama's got a real problem. And the idea that he's on our side, I pretty much gave that idea up a long, long time ago. He's working for the other side. For whatever the other side is, he's working for it. Does not love this country, doesn't care about this country. And he's got something better in mind because he's so much smarter than we all are, except he never could even write a paper to become head of the law review. That's kind of funny. Well, we'll be back very shortly.
Our device is something that you can plug into your television, and now you can use your television as a social television type experience. So in the Portal universe, you can watch your favorite content creators' videos, live streams, music. We also have TV subscriptions as well.
Subscriptions.
You can also
regular channels, all the sports.
Right. You can actually cut your cable from your cable subscription and get QUX TV on our QX TV boxes, and you can pay half the price that you're currently paying for your cable television subscription, and you can get all the best premium TV channels and more. I mean, it's really, there's so much on there, Rudy. I mean, you've seen it.
No, I've seen it and I use it, and it's good. I mean, it's great. It's just exactly the same except for half the price. Plus, nobody is finding out what I'm watching, and that's not being reported to anybody.
Right. So you have absolute privacy using this device, which you don't have on other devices out there currently on the market.
This is absolutely great. QUX.TV is how you can find out about it. QUX.TV.
Use promo code RUDY to receive $30 off.
Hello. Back for the final segment of America's Mayor Live, coming to you on this day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. Ted and I got a chance to experience Black Friday, and we did actually have the courage. Now, you know, some people believe it takes courage to go to war or stuff like that. I think it takes courage to go shopping, and particularly on Black Friday. But we actually did find a parking spot, and we did walk through we're trying to buy something. They didn't have it, but we walked through a store, right? And we walked through the Mall of New Hampshire, and I would say it was. Well, I'm not familiar with the Mall of New Hampshire, you know, on regular Thanksgivings, but it looked like it was pretty crowded. But it wasn't like crowded in the way I would have been used to 3 or 4, 5 years ago. But then I'd be comparing it to New York, and New York has so many more people that that might not be a fair comparison. But the figures will be in pretty shortly as to whether this was a poor, average, or good Black Friday. I think that one of the things that has to be factored in is with purchases online over a period of time, the retail purchases are just necessarily going to go down as the online purchases go up. They may meet an equilibrium. Certainly happening in the radio and live streaming business. We went over ratings the other day on our radio show, and from the time that I started, which is just about 3 years ago, the percentage of online audience keeps going up and up and up and up. And in our case, thank goodness, the terrestrial radio audiences have gone up and up and up and up. And we have, I don't know, I feel almost embarrassed to tell them, right, about how well the radio show is doing, Ted. But it's doing very, very well.
Very well.
I don't know if you know this, but no one would write this because I'm a Trump supporter and never going to write anything that makes it look like you're good, effective, or really very good. But we've been ahead of Hannity now for over a year in New York. And not only am I ahead of Hannity, but all my colleagues are, meaning the 2 shows that come after me. The one with James Golden, and then the one with John Catsimatidis.
So good.
And it's a good lead. And of course, Hannity was, aside from Rush, the king of radio. So we must be doing something right. I think maybe telling the truth might be the thing, and maybe a little bit more openly and a little bit more courageously than Fox has become once a truly great patriotic station with tremendous courage. But from the time that they called Arizona for Biden, and then all the things they said about January 6th and the way in which a number of their people went hysterical over January 6th, they can be very embarrassed when the whole thing comes out and they find out that January 6th, how much of it, not all of it, but how much of it was manufactured to create that impact, and they were the patsies that fell for it. I was fortunate in that at a very early stage, and before I had a chance to even focus on January 6th, He was given the tape done by John Sullivan, who just got convicted a while back, in which you can see how it was a largely contrived event. You can see his efforts to bring Antifa people there. And then you can see the way in which his photographing of it was a setup. Also, it leaves you with frightening questions about the murder of Ashley Babbitt that made it look, on the surface at least, as prima facie a first-degree murder case. And of course, the whole thing was covered up in one of the worst miscarriages of justice in American legal history. So there's a lot that's going to come out about January 6th. In fact, over the next couple of years, America is going to have to absorb the true impact of just how corrupt the upper echelon of the Democrat Party is. And it is way beyond anything that I imagined was the case. Or the corruption of the press that went along with some things that you would never imagine patriotic people would do to their own country. But we worked very, very hard, even though we couldn't win the cases because so many of them were done in places that are corrupt. I mean, the places where they fixed the election were largely cities that are thoroughly corrupt democratic cities where you couldn't possibly get a fair decision on a political case. But the reality is that enough of the evidence has been preserved so that a little by little, day in and day out, more and more of it comes out. More and more of it comes out. Like the January 6th film, now you're wondering, why were these people put in jail and the key thrown away, even when that's not done to, violent criminals and murderers? Because it's a cover-up, and because it was one of the chapters in the book called Frame Donald Trump at All Costs. Because if he really keeps control, he's going to find out about us, and we're all going to go to jail. That's a big title. We'll shorten it. Well, I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. The weekend is a weekend, for you to enjoy your families, and hopefully you're with your families or you're going to see your families. And this is what this holiday is for. It's also for what George Washington originally said it was for, to be thankful for the Constitution and government of the United States, which means you got to be ready to fight for it. They're not taking it away from us. They have taken it away from us. We do not have a justice system in this country. I would be lying to you if I said we did. We've got to win it back. All the elements are there to do it. We just need the will and the strength and the courage and that extra assistance that we pray for from God to do it. And then we'll be able to fulfill our obligation to our children that our parents fulfilled, which is to pass on a even better country than the one given to us. Because right now we're not doing that. But we're going to make up the difference. We're going to do it together with so many of our friends and colleagues. But we're going to be a big part of it, you and me. So you stay with us tomorrow at 3 on WABCRadio.com. Sorry, no, we're going to the weekend. Sunday at 10 with the incomparable Dr. Maria on Uncovering the Truth. And then on Monday at 3 on WABCRadio.com and on 8 on the social media you're listening to us on right now. We'll be back, and we'll be back with the truth, which is being withheld from you daily. God bless America.